Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this Wednesday afternoon. And again, it's a little bit of a slow day for basketball. There's not really big news. Not like a Woj tweet hasn't taken over the internet yet, and no one has said anything controversial yet. And the Olympics, they just concluded, so no one really has much to, say. So in this first segment, we're actually going to shift our focus back to the NBA. I'm going to be talking about the in-season tournament as well as the group play that had just recently been announced. So I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about my thoughts on the in-season tournament, because a lot of people, they have mixed opinions on the in-season tournament as well as this group play and things like that. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. And then in the second segment, yesterday I did a segment on the top 10 point guards in the NBA, so now I will go ahead and do a segment of the top 10 shooting guards in the NBA, since I feel like that would only be fitting to, start from point guard, then move on to shooting guard, so on and so forth. Then in the third segment, I'm going to be doing a segment on how I would feel going into the NBA season, depending on which fan base I'd follow. So the teams that I'd be doing would be the Knicks, the Nets, the Celtics, and all of those teams in that specific, division. I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about that and my opinions on that, and whether or not you should worry, whether you should what you should look forward to in the season, things like that. So I'm just going to do that for a few teams in this segment. If you want me to do a different segment with different teams, let me know in the comments and I'll do one for that as well. And then in the fourth segment, I'm going to be looking at some extra notes that I have on Team USA, and how there's now some speculation that some of these players might end up teaming up and being on the the same NBA team after spending time on the Olympics. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about that and my opinions on that. We also have a special fifth segment at the end of the fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Hint, it does have some talks about the GOAT debate. Now, you're probably wondering, why am I saving the GOAT debate all the way towards the final segment? Well, mainly because if you think LeBron is the GOAT, nothing is going to change your mind. You think Michael Jordan's the GOAT, nothing is going to change your mind. And so, since it's more so about opinions and actual, things and actual facts that I can talk about, and, group play, or, for example, with the shooting guards, it's a lot easier to talk about. But with the GOAT debate, it's not that easy to, talk about and convince other people differently. Even though, they don't want to admit that they're wrong, and they are wrong, they just won't. So it's usually I try to avoid GOAT debates entirely, because, usually when you have your set opinion, there's nothing that I can do to change that. So, kind of be just like talking to a wall. You don't want to do that. So, anyways, before I begin and get into the first segment, I like to let everyone know that we love hearing from you during the show. Whether you've got a burning question, a hot take on the game, or just something that you've been dying to share, we're all ears. And if you really want to make sure that your comment or question gets noticed, just use Super Chat. You can hit the $ below the chat box, send in your message. It's guaranteed to get featured on the show. And plus, it's a great way to support our channel. Your Super Chats help us keep the lights on and bring you even more of the content that you love. And we're so grateful for each and every one of you who joins us here. Your support makes all the difference. So let's keep the conversation going. If Super Chat isn't really your thing, you can go to gsmcsports.net and tip or donate and leave a comment or question there, and we will read it once we get to it. We really appreciate all the every bit of support that you guys give us. So let's go right ahead and let's talk about the in-season tournament. So, similar to how these Olympics have been going on, the NBA also has its own version of a tournament that's not the same as the NBA Finals. It actually takes place before the NBA Finals. And this was a thing that was, newly introduced into the NBA. It was introduced last season. And a lot of people, they have some mixed feelings about it. Some people, they really don't think much about this. Some people, they also just, actually despise the idea of even having a tournament or, any kind of competition outside of the NBA Finals, because some people argued, like, what exactly is the point? Like, it only determines the teams that are good in the regular season as opposed to teams that are good in the postseason, because one of the big differences about the in-season tournament compared to the NBA championship and the NBA finals and playoffs is that these are single game eliminations. You don't play a series in the in-season tournament. You play single game eliminations and you move on. And the only thing that you really win are, like, incentives and an NBA Cup, which, at the end of the day, isn't really as valuable as an NBA championship or, holding a Lombardi trophy, or, like, it's just seen as less valuable. A lot of people think it's more like, for padding and things like that, and that it's not really necessary when you're thinking about, the NBA season in the grand scheme of things. Like, of all the things that's been talked about the least and has been made fun of the most, the in-season tournament is probably the biggest thing. And I'm a little bit on, both sides of the table with that. I don't think that this, tournament is necessary, but I'm not going to sit here and say that these games that we've been able to watch aren't any less competitive. Like, the in-season tournament does what it does. It gives the regular season some sort of value and something to look forward to, as well as, makes, these competitions seem like they have more value. Like, that's really where it's coming from, just giving these regular season games some sort of importance and making the fans and getting the fans engaged, getting the players engaged into, competing in these kinds of things. Like, the whole reason why this thing was made was to prevent load managing for, a lot of players and a lot of teams. Like, that's one of the things that really hurts the NBA, load management. Just thinking of the fact that your favorite player might not be playing in this game because of reasons. Like, literally not even because of, the fact that they're injured, but because they just don't want to get injured. Like, think of how crazy that sounds. Like, okay, I'm not going to play a game just because I'm afraid of getting injured. Imagine if that was the same mindset that Michael Jordan had. Imagine if that was the same mindset that Patrick Ewing had. All of those players that literally played in every single game and never wanted to sit out. Like, imagine if that was the thought process that they all started with. So, looking at the article, like, the NBA, they recently announced group play schedule, and the primetime matchups for the NBA Cup are going to be starting on November 12th. Like the inaugural iteration last season, which was called the in-season tournament, all 30 teams were randomly drawn into 6 groups of 5 based on their record from the previous season. The format for the tournament will stay the same, where each team will play the other squads in their respective groups once and on what will be called the Cup Nights. So next season, on Tuesday and Fridays between November 12th and December 3rd, those are going to be the Cup Nights for the in-season tournament, or as they're calling it now, the NBA Cup, whatever you want to call it. It's like, it's the same thing. At the culmination of group play, the 6 group winners will advance to the knockout rounds, in addition to 2 wildcard teams, one team from each conference with the best record in the group play but did not win its group. The 8 teams will then play in a single elimination format, which will start on December 10th. The semifinal and championship games will take place in Las Vegas on December 14th and December 17th. So this is obviously, all of these games are going to be televised, and they're going to be the semifinals and, the championship. They will be the only ones held in Las Vegas. So, excuse me, on November 12th for Tuesday, we have the Eastern Conference, the East A. It's the Knicks and the 76ers. They play at 7:30. And then on Tuesday at 10 o'clock, the Mavericks play the Golden State Warriors in the West C group. And then on Friday, November 15th, The Spurs are going to play the Los Angeles Lakers in 7:30, and then at 10 o'clock on that day, the Grizzlies and the Warriors are also going to be playing. The Lakers are grouped in the Western Group B along with the Spurs, and the Grizzlies and the Mavericks along with the Golden State Warriors are grouped along in Western Group C. Same with the Denver Nuggets. Those are the teams in Western Group C. And then on the Eastern Conference, on Tuesday, November 19th, the Cavs are going to be playing the Celtics in East Group C. And then in West Group B at 9:30, the Thunder are going to play the San Antonio Spurs. And Friday, on November 22nd, the Pacers are going to play the Milwaukee Bucks on 7:30. And that's in East Group B, by the way. And then in West Group C, the Mavericks are going to be playing the Denver Nuggets. And then on Tuesday, November 26th, the Milwaukee Bucks are going to be playing the Miami Heat at 7:30, and that's in the Eastern B standings. And then in the Western B standings, the Lakers are also going to be playing the Phoenix Suns at 10 o'clock on that Tuesday. And then on Friday, November 29th, the Knicks are going to be playing the Charlotte Hornets, and the Cavs are going to be playing the Atlanta Hawks. These are both Eastern Conference groups. The first game at 12 p.m. is going to be Eastern Conference A, and then the next game at 2:30 is going to be Eastern Conference C. There's also two more games on that Friday. Western Group C is going to be between the Pelicans and the Memphis Grizzlies. And then Western Group A, that's going to be the game at 7:30. It's going to be between the Clippers and the Minnesota Timberwolves. So these are the games that are going to be happening, from Tuesday and on Tuesdays and Fridays going into the month of November. So, just in case you guys want to tune into that. So NBA Cup winners and second place team will split the prize money amongst their players. Last season, after winning the inaugural event, each Lakers player received $500,000, while Pacers, the second place team, received $200,000. The losing players of the semifinals each got $100,000, and the losing players of the quarterfinal each got $50,000. So this year's prizes will be higher because of the latest collective bargaining agreement between the NBA and the National Basketball Players Association. In addition to the financial incentive for players, there will also be a Most Valuable Player award for the NBA Cup and all-tournament team. So these are just all of the things that's going to happen in the in the span of this play-in group and these NBA in-season tournament games. And the first games are going to be held on Tuesday, November 12th. The first game is going to be between the Knicks and the 76ers, along with the Dallas Mavericks against the Golden State Warriors. So those are the matchups. That's what's happening. That's what's going on these days. And that's going to be it for this first segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the second segment, where I go ahead and I give my list on the top 10 shooting guards going into this next season. I'll do the exact same thing that I did in the previous segment, where I just talked about their stats and the reason why I had them ranked in this specific spot. So I'll be right back after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, I'm just going to be listing off the top 10 shooting guards going into the NBA for this season. And, I'm just going to go ahead and give my opinions on that. I'll explain why I have them ranked as well. And my overall thought process on ranking them. Before I begin, however, I'd like to remind everybody to please go ahead and to use the link in the use the link in the description and to get your comments recognized. We love hearing from you guys during the show, so use the link in the description, or you could use Super Chat. Hit the $ button below and send in your message. It's guaranteed to get featured on the show. It's a great way to support our channel as well. Your Super Chats help us keep the lights on and bring you even more of the content that you love. We're so grateful for each and every one of you who joins us here, and your support makes a lot of difference. And we can keep the conversation going if you send in those Super Chats. And if Super Chat isn't really your thing, you can also go to gsmcsports.net to tip and to donate and to leave your comment or question. We appreciate every single bit of support that we can get. And without further ado, let's go right ahead and go into this second segment where I talk about some of the top shooting guards in the NBA right now. This isn't all time because, I feel like a lot of people already know who the best shooting guards in the world are, and the best shooting guards to ever play are, so I don't really feel like talking about them. Let's talk about the game and how it is now. So obviously, number one, you could really flip-flop between the first three players on my list, because I have no problem if you were to put either one of them on top of the other. And Anthony Edwards, in my opinion, he is the best shooting guard on this list. If this was, a couple of years ago, the best shooting guard in the NBA, without a doubt, was James Harden. And there was, everyone else was secondary. Nobody in the entire league was better than James Harden. And there was no other shooting guard in the entire league that could even measure up to James Harden and his talent, right? So now that James Harden is no longer the same player that he was, this number one shooting guard debate is it's open for the public, for lack of a better term. Any of the top three players that I said, that I'm going to say, you can put them in number one and I wouldn't be upset. But if this was, a year where James Harden was doing his scoring prowess, then you would be absolutely ridiculous if you were to put James Harden any lower than any other guard. And Anthony Edwards arguably was one of the better options for Team USA in these Olympic Games. Through his NBA career, he only averaged less than 20 points in his rookie season, and even then he was averaging 19.3 points per game in his rookie year. But in this previous season, he averaged 25 points per game when 46% shooting, as well as 35% shooting from three. Also ended the year averaging 5 rebounds and 5 assists as well. And he also had a very decent, I say decent playoff because he fell off a little bit towards the end of the playoffs, but through a majority of his, of the playoff years that he was playing in last year, he played phenomenally. He made it all the way up to the conference finals, and the only reason why he didn't make it all the way was because of Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks. He ended up beating the Denver Nuggets in 7 games, something that we didn't expect the Timberwolves to do at all, and more so off of a comeback after, the Denver Nuggets had a lead early in Game 7. And he also averaged 27 points and 7 rebounds and 6 assists in the playoffs, along with shooting 48% from the field, 40% from 3, and 80% from the free throw line. So Again, if you have any of these other three shooting guards ahead of him, then I'm not going to be opposed to that, because the next shooting guard on this list is Devin Booker. He would have been number one on this list if it hadn't been for Anthony Edwards and his play in the Olympics. Like, last season, I mean, you can make the argument that Devin Booker isn't even supposed to be a shooting guard, that he's a point guard, but this is my list, and I can do whatever I want with the list. And in my opinion, Devin Booker has always been a shooting guard throughout his career, and this is, the first season where he's actually, been a point guard. But despite that, I would still have him as one of the best shooting guards. Like, he's just a shooting guard that's playing point guard, given the role that his team, based on how his team is constructed, right? Now, it's not the same as what James Harden did. James Harden was a shooting guard and turned into a point guard. Devin Booker is just playing the point guard. And in this year of playing point guard, it's arguably been his best year, period. Like, he averaged the most points he's ever averaged in his career, 27.1, averaged 49% from the field, and he takes a lot of mid-ranges, so that should be noted. He shoots 55% from inside the arc. And again, he takes one of the most difficult mid-ranges that you might see in today's NBA. He also shoots 36% from 3, and on top of the 27 points, he was also able to average almost 7 assists as well. And again, the only real reason why he wasn't the best shooting guard was because of the fact that Anthony Edwards was playing really well in the Olympics. But even, aside from that, Devin Booker played phenomenally in the Olympics as well. He was arguably, the United States' unsung hero in the entire Olympics. Like, he was playing phenomenal. And not only that, him in the postseason is also something to marvel at. I mean, throughout his entire career in the postseason, he's averaged 28 points per game. And last season, he averaged 27 points per game, even though, he got swept. Getting swept by Anthony Edwards, I mean, it's not that bad considering, how good the team was. And even then, in 2023, when he got bounced early in the second round, I believe it was, he was averaging 33 points per game and shot 61% from inside the arc, 58% from the field, 50% from 3, and was also averaging 7 assists along with that. So 33 points on 58% shooting, and 50% shooting from 3, as well as 7 assists. Like, that is just ridiculous numbers coming in from a shooting guard. And really, the only knock on his career is the fact that he ended up losing in the finals. But unlike Anthony Edwards and the rest of the shooting guards that are on this list, he made the finals. And, a lot of the other shooting guards on this list, they can't really say that they make the finals while also producing, crazy numbers like what he was producing. Again, not all of them. Some of them, they have made the finals, but not all of them on this list. Now, this final shooting guard in the top 3, again, you could order them, the top 3, in any which way. But Donovan Mitchell, I think, is by far, clear-cut a top 3 shooting guard in this league. He's one of the best playoff performers in this modern NBA, and one of the best playoff performers that I've seen in recent memory. It seems like every single year he makes the postseason, he always, does way more. He goes above and beyond the expectations that he has in the postseason. There's rarely been a time where he goes to the postseason and he averages less points than what he already produces. He's been an all-star since 2020 and made the all-star team last year as well. He averaged 26 points per game on, 46% shooting, as well as 36% shooting from 3. He's also one of the very few players in NBA history to score 70 points. That's one thing that I didn't mention about Devin Booker. Devin Booker has a 70-point game. He also had a 60-point game last year, but ended up losing. And, one of the very few players in NBA history to have 70-point games, both of those guys. And again, Donovan Mitchell, he's just a ridiculous playoff performer. In this last year's playoffs, he averaged 29 points per game and shot 47% from the field as well as 35% from three. Throughout almost every single postseason, he's been a ridiculous playoff performer. And the only real, bugaboo about his career, ironically, is in the playoffs. Like, he doesn't, despite, being a playoff performer, his teams haven't really had that much success in the postseason. The farthest that Donovan Mitchell has gone in the postseason was no farther than the second round. And, that's different than Anthony Edwards and Devin Booker, who have each made it past the second round and have each played like fewer years than Donovan Mitchell has in this league. Just a little bit. Devin Booker has more years than the both of them, but he's made the finals, which is something that Donovan Mitchell hasn't yet. And because of that, that's going to, affect him in the rankings, in my opinion. And, on top of the fact that just wherever he goes, like, he might play well, but his team in the end of the day doesn't really play well. So that's the end of the top three. Then the next player in this list is a little bit controversial. Kyrie Irving. Again, a lot of people would think that Kyrie would be a top three, or that he, would be a little bit higher than what you would expect in this group. Oh, and I just realized that there's some people in the chat. I haven't acknowledged that. I apologize. Just give me 1 second. So, Mob is curious what group the Miami Heat are in, and are they in a group of death, or are they in one of the easiest groups in the season tournament? Okay, that's an interesting way to put that. But from my understanding, the Miami Heat, they're in Eastern Group B, and they're paired up with the Milwaukee Bucks, the Pacers, and there's still one more team, and I have no idea which team that is. There's one more team left in, the Eastern standings, because, they have Miami, they have Milwaukee, and they have Indiana. I have no idea what's the other team that's in the standings for them. Yeah, I have no idea. Well, I'll have to see later on. I only have the games that were revealed. I don't have the groups, but I have no idea whether or not they're in a group of death. I mean, they do have the Pacers and they do have the Bucks, so that's two of the four positions that are probably going to be occupied. I mean, those teams are really dominant. And he also had another question in the chat. I'm just going to go ahead and read it. For Kevin Durant, would I put them in the rankings for shooting guards or for small forwards? He's a small forward. Maybe not even a small forward. He might even end up being in the power forward, because, Bradley Beal, I don't know what I'm putting Bradley Beal at, even though I don't even think he's going to make the list, but he would probably be in a small forward or a power forward category. P.S. He plays both positions at a high level. Yes, he does, but, that's not his main position. Similar to how, the shooting guard is mainly Devin Booker's position, and Anthony Edwards and Donovan Mitchell, and this guy, Kyrie Irving. Now, as I mentioned before, this player is a little bit controversial, not just being in the rankings, but being a shooting guard in general. But I had Luka Doncic at the point guard on my previous list, so that would make Kyrie Irving the shooting guard. And the way I see it, every single year that since he's been on the Brooklyn Nets, he's been a shooting guard. He even told James Harden that he was a shooting guard on his team. So not only that, but when you look at his position in Basketball Reference, it has him listed as shooting guard, even though you can make the argument that he should be a point guard, or however you want to put him at. It really doesn't matter. Now, Kyrie Irving, again, he's also controversial because of the opinions that he has outside of, what he says in front of the media, right? He has these, these perceptions and these thoughts and these things that he wants to say, but, they're against the media and things like that, and it just paints him in a very dark light, I guess you could say. There are a lot of things that he said that was rather questionable. And one thing that isn't questionable about him, though, is how good he is on a basketball court. He averaged 25 points per game last season, was able to shoot 41% from three, as well as almost 50% from the field, 25, 5, and 5 on almost 50, 40, 90 shooting from the entire field. He was just that guy this last season. Made it to the finals, didn't really play well in the finals, but overall in the postseason, he wasn't that bad, even though, I've seen him play much better when he was paired up with LeBron. He's also the first player on this list that actually has a championship ring on his resume. And again, like, the only reason why he isn't really ranked that much higher is because of his performance in the finals. But aside from that, he does have arguably the best resume outside of everybody on this list. The only player that's really, getting a resume that's stacking up towards his is the next player on this list, Jaylen Brown. And I wouldn't be saying this if he didn't win a championship the last season. I mean, he averaged 23 points per game this last season, shot almost 50% from the field, 35% from three, and was also able to tally 3 assists along with 5 rebounds as well. Again, the biggest reason why he's on this list is because of his postseason performance. The Celtics, they only lost 2 games in the entire 3 games actually, in the entire postseason, and every single one of the games that they played, it was basically a blowout in the postseason. And the only reason why Jaylen Brown is on this list is because he was able to win the Eastern Conference Finals MVP as well as the Finals MVP in the postseason. He was by far the best player in every single postseason series that he played in this postseason. Now, he would be a lot lower on this list if he didn't win the championship last year, but, can't really change history, and because of that, he is going to be top 5 on this list, and, I mean, I really wouldn't, a lot of people, they might question why I would put Jaylen Brown under Kyrie Irving, or, why I would put Kyrie Irving over Jaylen Brown. It's going to start up a lot of controversy. But I really think that, despite the fact that Jaylen Brown might have outplayed Kyrie Irving in the postseason, he also had a lot more help from his teammates as opposed to Kyrie Irving, whose only help was Luka Doncic. And aside from Luka, there was really nothing that the Mavericks had going for them. So that's sort of the reason why I have Jaylen Brown underneath Kyrie and why Kyrie is ranked up there so high. Next on this list, we're going into below the top 10, so players that just aren't in these top 10 rankings, and actually players below the top 5. So they're getting a little bit, unknown, I guess you could say. There aren't really that many popular shooting guards, I guess you could say. Well, not as popular as there were NBA point guards. So next player on this list is Desmond Bane. Again, there weren't that many good shooting guards in the league last season, or not as many shooting guards that can stack up as the other few guys that I mentioned. So the distance between 5 and 6 is way greater than the distance between 1 and 2, maybe even 1 and 3, heck, arguably even 1 and 4. The distances between 5 and 6 are crazy. And I mean, I can't really defend Desmond Bane even being on this list, other than the fact that he produced good enough numbers to be considered on this list. I mean, he didn't make the postseason last year, but he was able to average 23 points per game on 46% shooting from the field, as well as 38% shooting from 3, and was also able to tally 5 assists as well, along with 1 steal and an effective field goal of 55%. Again, not really much that can be said about Desmond Bane because, there aren't that many talented shooting guards in this league to be considered at that. Now, I know you might think DeRozan is a shooting guard, but no, he's actually more of a small forward or power forward now with how he was playing on the Chicago Bulls. So I don't even think I can put him in this list. And speaking of DeMar, his teammate Zach LaVine is definitely making this list, even though he barely really played at all last season. I understand he didn't play at all last season, but when he's healthy, everyone knows just how much of a competent scorer he is. I mean, his last great season his last good season was only 2 years ago, where he averaged 24 points per game and was selected for the All-Star team. And even then, in 2021, he averaged 27 points per game and was also selected for the All-Star team. He just didn't play nearly enough games in this season, but I don't really think that would be fair in docking him a few points on this ranking, because, let's face it, the next shooting guards on this list, you can definitely agree with me that Zach LaVine is better than every single one of the shooting guards that are left on this list. You'll see them all, but I mean, again, last season, he only played 25 games, but he averaged 19 points, shot 45% from the field, and was also able to shoot 34% from three. Again, not very interesting, but he's a lot better than the rest of the guards on this list. Actually, wait, no. Derek White is 8th on this list. I should have that pointed out. He's definitely 8 on this list. It wasn't that previous guy before. But given the fact that Derek White won the Olympics, and given the fact that, he was a very important piece to the Boston Celtics and their success, I had to put him on this list. Throughout his, tenure with not his tenure, but throughout the championship run that he had with the Boston Celtics, he averaged 16 points per game, shot 40% from three and 45% from the field, as well as shooting 92% from the free throw line. Arguably the most efficient player for the Celtics in the entire postseason. Definitely their most valuable player as well. Well, one of the most valuable players that they have. And he ended the season, averaging 15 points per game, as well as almost shooting 40% from three and shooting 46% from the field. Again, the rest of the shooting guards on this list, like this one right here, Devin Vassell, I just can't really put him better than Derek White. I mean, Devin Vassell, sure, you can make the argument that his numbers were just a little bit better. 19 points per game, 47% shooting from the field, and 37% shooting from three. Big reason why he's not higher than Derek White is because of his postseason play. I would much rather see Derek White in the postseason. I would much rather have Derek White, as a shooting guard in the postseason as opposed to having somebody like Devin Vassell. But that's just me. And again, there's one more spot left on this list. I can't really save it for just one person. I mean, I think that, Tyler Hero should be in this number 10 spot, but I really don't know if Tyler Hero is even worth being on this list. He averaged 20 points per game last season, shot 40% from the field, and 39% from three, which are great stats and definitely warrant him to be part of the shooting guard list, but I cannot take myself seriously if I put Tyler Hero on this list. I can't, but let me know in the comments what you guys think. But aside from that, that's my list of the top shooting guards going into the NBA. So now I will go ahead and move on to the third section of this podcast, which is going to be talking about how I would feel as a fan going into the NBA season and going into this season. It's just my opinions on how I would feel as a fan. The teams that I'm going to be going over are the Celtics, the Knicks, the 76ers, and the Brooklyn Nets, as well as the Toronto Raptors. So basically all the teams in the Atlantic Division. I'm just going to go ahead and talk about, my opinions on them and where they're going to be at this season right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, I'm just going to be giving off my opinions on the teams in the Atlantic Division. I'm not going to be, dwindling on it, all that long, because I spent a pretty long time covering the list of the top 10 shooting guards. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'll be not that quick, but I'll summarize and I'll give enough information, no more than what I need to. And so I guess we should go ahead and just dive right into this list. So the first team in the Atlantic Division is the Boston Celtics. They are obviously the championship team in the entire NBA. They had the best record in the regular season. They had by far the best record in the postseason. And they're the number one seed. They ended up being champions. So really, you'd be absolutely insane not to think of the fact that they're going to run it back again. So if I was a Boston Celtics fan, I'd be thinking, run it back, do it all again. So they cruised through the Eastern Conference last year, no problem, and no team has sort of dethroned the Boston Celtics as title favorites heading into next year. The core players on the team, Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Derek White, and Kristaps Porzingis, they're all under contract for the next coming season. So the thought process for the Celtics should be to do it again. And, that's obviously where they're going at, despite the fact that the organization is trying to sell itself, right? Like, the owners are trying to sell the team before they have to pay all of that amazing luxury tax due to being in the second apron. But, on the bright side, they do have a championship contending team. And that's really, as a fan, if I was a Celtics fan, I would be very happy going into this next season and very excited because this is arguably the best chance to run it back and to do it all again. Now, the next team on this list is the New York Knicks. Now, they were the second seed last year in the Eastern Conference, and they ended up exiting the second round last year after, losing to the Pacers, and mainly due to injuries. So the biggest thing that I really would feel if I was a Knicks fan was to stay healthy. And if you stay healthy, you have the best chances of winning the entire Eastern Conference. And if you beat the Boston Celtics, then you have a better chance of winning the championship. So the Knicks, they could have been in the Eastern Conference Finals last year if they would have stayed healthy. They upgraded their starting lineup by getting Mikal Bridges, and not to mention the depth is still intact. They still were able to manage to keep the same depth that they had, and they also have the tools to beat Boston in a 7-game series. So just stay healthy and try to go up against Boston again in this coming playoffs, see where that gets you. Now, the next team on this list is the Philadelphia 76ers. They were the 7th seed, and they got bounced out of the first round and losing to the New York Knicks. Now, if I was a Philly fan, I would be really high on Paul George right now. And, they just got PG-13 as their third option, or maybe their second option, depending on how you look at it. Oubre is back. Martin and Drummond are also great additions. And they didn't lose anybody that was too significant to their title hopes. So this could be the 76ers' year, and they should all be rather optimistic going into the postseason. But me, not being a 76ers fan, I wouldn't even think that they would, make it past the second round, even though they have Paul George. But again, that's just me. But, I would still be, if I was a 76ers fan, I would still be optimistic about this year and about the possibility that this could be the year that they go all the way. Now, we're up to the final two teams on this list, and these are the only teams that aren't really competing for a spot, and ironically, they're both tanking, so yeah. The Brooklyn Nets, they finished as the 11th seed in 2024, and really the one thing that the Nets have to look forward to are the picks that they were able to get once again after, trading James Harden. The Rockets trade led us let the New York Nets tank in 25 and 26 picks, putting the Nets in the race for Cooper Flag and whoever the 2026 draft class has. So, really, if I were, and I am a Nets fan, what I would do is I would honestly trade Cam Thomas and Bojan and... Actually, no, I wouldn't trade. Wrong Cam. I would trade Cam Johnson, and then I would let Cam Thomas take the reins of the Brooklyn Nets and have him score 30 points in every single game or take 30 shots in every game and just see where that goes and, just develop the team with the picks that the Nets end up getting in the future, right? Like, this is sort of where the Nets have to prepare themselves. They have to prepare for the future while the Celtics and the Knicks are fighting off the luxury tax. The Nets, they can be retooling and rebuilding for the future and avoiding a heavy, luxury tax that they would eventually have to pay if they go the same route as the Knicks and the Celtics. And then the final team on this list is the Toronto Raptors. Again, I'm very surprised that the Raptors even finished with the worse record than the Brooklyn Nets, but that's besides the point. They ended up being the 12th seed last year, and now it's time for the Toronto Raptors to rebuild. First official year of rebuilding for the Raptors, I should say. They have Scotty Barnes. They have to develop their young guys via drafting. They have to build back up to the playoffs because, this is arguably the first time. This is the first time in a while where they have not made the playoffs. And if you are a Raptors fan, you really want to get back into the playoff talks because, usually they always make the postseason, especially with, the core that they have. Now that they have to sort of rebuild that core with Scotty, RJ, as well as, other young guys on the team, now they just have to build through the draft and they have to redraft a lot of their players. So that's my thoughts if I was a fan of every single team in that division. But let me know in the comments what you guys think and what you guys would worry about and your favorite teams and what they also have to worry about in this season. But aside from that, we are out of time for this segment, so now I will go ahead and go into the fourth segment, where I talk about some notes about Team USA as well as the possibility of Steph and LeBron playing with each other when they become free agents. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about that after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, I'm just going to be talking about some notes that I have on Team USA and some things that I also have to say about Kevin Durant, LeBron, and Steph, because there's been some report and there's been some talk about the possibility that these three might, or at least, the two of them, one of the two, might actually end up teaming up yet again towards the end of their careers. And one of the biggest, this was on First Take. A lot of people, they sort of had the speculation that these guys, LeBron and Steph, since they become free agents in 2026, they would consider teaming up and playing on the same team in an NBA standing. Now, this sort of, obviously this was going to come up after, the Olympics and after the United States ended up beating every single team in the Olympics, but really not entirely sure if this is, the best form of approach, right? Like, I don't really think that this is sort of like the best way to go about it. Like, you're just going to be milking that possibility up until the very end, and then when it comes, everyone's just going to be disappointed, especially since, it's LeBron. LeBron always gets nothing but disappointment in free agency, especially like when it comes to recruiting talent. So now really the big question is, could some of the gold medal winners from Team USA pair up on a future NBA team? That's what this article is sort of suggesting. So Sam Amick of The Athletic also explored the topic, but nothing that superstar-laden teams are sometimes born out of their bonding experience with USA basketball. So a LeBron and Steph Curry pairing seems unlikely now that LeBron's son is on the Lakers roster and Curry would like to finish his career with the Warriors. But could Golden State eventually wind up with Durant and Curry reuniting, or a Devin Booker and Curry backcourt? This is sort of what the article is exploring. And that would be a little bit odd, having Devin Booker as your teammate if you are Steph Curry, given the amount of shots that they both like to take. But they did pair up on the Olympics, so I wouldn't really put it past any one of them to team up, and I wouldn't say it's a bad idea for any one of them to team up. And again, like the Suns owner Matt Ishbia has squashed talk of trading his stars, but amidst speculations that could change if Phoenix flops in the postseason yet again. If Kevin Durant wants to play for Team USA in Los Angeles, team officials would like to have him back, according to ESPN's Brian Windhorst. I would not rule out KD playing, and I talked with Team USA officials, and they would give him a professional yes right now. And of all the stars that was on this recent Team USA roster, Kevin Durant has been, the only one that's been, considering a return. Anthony Edwards doesn't want to play for Team USA again, at least that's what he said. And LeBron and Steph both claim that they're both going to be a little bit old for the event and they wouldn't want to compete in it again. But again, who knows? Maybe maybe they'll still be playing basketball at a high level after 4 years. I have no idea. Who knows? But Kevin Durant does seem like the only likely pick on who is going to end up playing on the Olympics yet again. And not to mention some of the other young stars on the team as well. Tyrese Halliburton hopes to retain his spot on Team USA in future Olympics. He'd informed managing director Grant Hill that he'd welcome an invite to the Los Angeles Games. I've told Grant, I've said it many times, I want to represent USA basketball for as long as I can. And there's also Paolo Banchero. I talked about him before in the previous podcast where I thought he could be a pretty good member for Team USA. He was also a member for USA's last World Cup team that was under serious consideration for the Paris Olympics, according to Joe Varden of The Athletic. He's a player Hill wants to feature in future Olympics. In the same piece, Vardan speculates which players from this year's gold medal squad might be back for 2028, and the article ends off right there. So again, the real thought process is, does Steph Curry have intentions of teaming up with Kevin Durant in the future yet again, or does LeBron have intentions of teaming up with either of them in the future when they become a free agent? Because a lot of people are speculating that that's going to be the next step going into the future and going into LeBron's future. But I don't think that's going to happen. I genuinely don't think that that LeBron is going to be able to team up with Steph or Kevin Durant in the future. And even then, I think that they'll be a little bit too old to get complementary pieces in time. And that's just my opinion on it. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. Would you guys really like to see LeBron, Steph, and KD on the same team? Would you like to see LeBron and Steph on the same team? Or would you like to see Kevin Durant reunite with Steph once again? But that's all I have for you in this segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the fifth and the final segment where I talk about Stephon Marbury and him dismissing the GOAT debate and also bringing up Kobe. So I thought all of that was really interesting. I'm going to talk about that in the fifth when I get back. So be sure to stay tuned after this short break. And we are back with the fifth and the final segment on the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fifth segment, I'm going to be talking about Stephon Marbury dismissing the GOAT debate between MJ and LeBron by sharing a surprising stats comparison. Now, as I've said before on the previous segment, the GOAT debate is something that's just going to be endless. No matter what I say and no matter what other people say, your opinions just aren't going to be... Your opinions just aren't going to matter. Like, it doesn't matter what I say, like, you're immediately going to think that if you think one person is the GOAT, then you obviously think that one person is going to be the GOAT and stay the GOAT. Like, no matter what I say, no matter what I tell a Jordan fan, he's always going to think Michael Jordan is the GOAT. No matter what I tell a LeBron fan, the LeBron fan is also going to think LeBron is the GOAT. Like, there's just nothing that I can do. There's nothing that, I can say, and there's nothing that can be said to change your opinion. And so it's like, that's usually why I don't really like talking about GOAT debates, and that's usually why I don't, do these GOAT debates, because they end up going nowhere. Regardless of what I say, your opinion isn't going to change. Regardless of what you say, my opinion isn't going to change. And, you're just going in circles at that point. And it's like, why do you even need to go in circles? And honestly, my opinion on the GOAT debate is, it's simple. If you like Jordan, you like Jordan, and you just can't accept change. If you like LeBron, you can accept change, but you also have to understand that you got to respect Michael Jordan and the rest of the athletes that came before LeBron. But, obviously those two do not interlude and they do not intermingle nearly as much as they should. But aside from that, Stephon Marbury, a former player in the NBA, he had some thoughts on the ongoing GOAT debate, and it was over who deserved the GOAT title. This was, his thought process. Recently, a stat comparison went viral featuring James's supremacy in dominating in his early career over Michael Jordan. However, Stephon Marbury has decided to weigh in with a surprising comparison that could end the discussion once and for all. He shared a compelling stat highlighting Michael Jordan's stunning achievements during his time with the Chicago Bulls, captioning, "Shouldn't even be mentioned in the same breath as MJ." And basically the graphic that got pulled up was when, from 1987, from 1986 all the way up to 1998, Michael Jordan has been in, relative, average of 30 points per game. In 87, he averaged 37. In 88, he averaged 35. In 89, he averaged 32, so on and so forth. We know Michael Jordan's greatness. He averages 30 in almost every season. And the stat comparison, again, it featured Jordan's dominance, with the basketball legend securing 10 scoring titles throughout his career. Each season listed in the stat revealed Jordan's scoring averaging ranging from 28 points per game to 37 points per game in 86 and 87. While James has had an extraordinary career filled with NBA titles and numerous accolades, Marbury's focus was on Jordan's unmatched scoring prowess. In this aspect, Jordan simply stands alone. And Stephon Marbury also had claims that LeBron James's Olympic MVP was a mistake, and he believed that Steph Curry deserved the honor instead. But you see, usually whenever conversations they go into this, like something like this is immediately where I say hater alert. Like, it's that simple. This is immediately where I say hater alert, hater alert, hater alert, because I'm sorry to say there's huge reasons, and there's so many different things that you're not even thinking about when you're just looking at the graphic. For one, yes, he was a scoring demon, he was a scoring monster, but there was nobody in the NBA that was even close to his level of talent, compared to how in the NBA there were so many other players that were closer to LeBron's level of talent compared to players being closer to MJ's level of talent. And LeBron is incredibly talented. You cannot tell me that if you were to put LeBron in this little time period, he wouldn't do the same thing. Like, it's just unfair for both of them, actually. Like, for both of that stat, it's really unfair because, like, if you look at, obviously, yes, MJ, he was far above every single player, but we have no idea how well he dominated in this era, given how many often players like him can hold the ball. But, for LeBron's standpoint, if you put him in this era back then, imagine how many points he would have against everyone else. Like, LeBron weighed more than every single one of the players on the Bad Boy Pistons. I know how we like to use the Bad Boy Pistons to be like, oh, that's the team that needed to help MJ elevate to the next level. Meanwhile, LeBron, he was already at that level, and it was just his team that needed to be at that level. And there's just so much context that gets avoided when doing these kinds of debates. People only look at numbers, they don't look at context, and whenever you do that, I immediately think hater alert, because how could you not look at context when looking at these sorts of things? And I just don't think it's that fair. Yes, the scoring is phenomenal, and it's like, you can't win the game without scoring the ball, yes, but it's everything else that the player can do on the court, and everything else that, amounts to that player and what that player can do. I mean, another thing that should also be considered is that back then, there was no such thing as zone defense. Like, players today, they can play zone and they can rotate pretty easily. Back then, you weren't allowed to play zone, meaning that if LeBron were to go up against players that actually played man, I don't think there's a single man in the history that can guard LeBron by himself. Like, just alone. And obviously, back then and back in the day, with how man defense was so dominant, I mean, it makes sense that Michael Jordan was going to just, outplay anyone that's guarding him, because nobody can stop Michael Jordan one-on-one, and the same way that no one can stop LeBron one-on-one. It's just LeBron doesn't get put in nearly the same amount of one-on-one situations because of the fact that there is no zone, and because of the fact that you can legitimately, double team these kinds of players, and you can rotate out to the shooters, therefore making your job a little bit easier when guarding them. Like, it's just, there's so many different context things that are just avoided that I don't really like mentioning them at all, and that's sort of one of the biggest reasons as to why I don't really have these debates. And the fact that it's just the scoring being put here, I don't think that's even fair. And there's also there was also the quote on him believing that Steph Curry should have won the MVP. Like, that is immediately just hater logic right there. I'm sorry, but it's like, Steph Curry only played 2 good games in the Olympics. And you really think that the player that only played the 2 good games is better than the player that played well in all the games? I'm sorry, that just doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. It's like, imagine if it was LeBron. Imagine if LeBron only played well in the final games. He wouldn't win the MVP if he only played well in the final games. Like, he'd definitely get the hype, but he wouldn't get the MVP. And that's really, all that I have on this segment. And, it's just the fact that GOAT debate is like, it's only a small part of the GOAT debate. And I can go on and on about those kinds of things, which is insane. But that's all that I have. Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. That's all that I have for you today on the show. Again, remember to use Super Chat, and remember to use the link if Super Chat isn't your thing. We are so grateful for every one of us and every one of you guys who joins here to support. It really makes all the difference. So again, let's keep the conversation going for the future, and be sure to use the link in the description. Be sure to use Super Chat. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.